Hi, I'm John. This is my show, An American Scheme. This is a video from a call for an uprising. You know, I watch his videos and stuff, and there's one main agenda that he really pushes about Satanism and stuff, and he claims to be a Christian and says that the only way through salvation is through Jesus Christ, okay? Do you see how that's a mantra? It's like the same thing, the occult thing that Aleister Crowley, I did a little research about him. He's actually incredibly interesting. He was double spy in the World Wars. I mean, it's freaking insane. His story is just wild. And so, but one of the things with the occultism is what he's talking about is getting into these hypnotic trances, okay? And so that's one of the ways that you would use these psychedelic drugs to get into these hypnotic trances. But then he spoke about other things about how people get into hypnotic trances. And he talks about, like, the Hindus, they do meditation. And he goes through meditation, they focus on a singular point, and through that they can connect to this, you know, they can get into that hypnotic trance. And then he said the other one was like mantras and stuff like that, and like symbols through stuff like that. He said by doing that stuff, and you could bring upon this stuff and get in this hypnotic trance and do things like that. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get into this hypnotic trance where he can function like on a normal level. He wants to function like how when you're sober and you're normal in reality, right? He wants to get totally whacked out in a different mindset, but be conscious and present and aware. And that's like what they're attempting to do, and a big part of what they do. And so what this guy says is that's all Satanism and stuff. And so I have a much better understanding of God and everything. And so what I would say is that one of the most obvious forms of Satanism, of what Satanism actually would be and what occultism is, the church. Like, think about like the reality. Look at the visual attire of the Catholic Church. Look at how it's visually the way it is. It's very ceremonial. It's very ritual and practices. And then by facts, it's facts. What do we find out that occurred in there? Very much sexual abusing of young boys has occurred in that environment. Okay, so when people are talking about, oh, you got to go to God, it's the only way. Yeah, but sure enough, don't you find out that when you go into there, you find that that's the actual ritual symbolic practices of what the occultism is really about. And when you go to that place, what do you find out is sexual abuse is occurring rampantly in that environment, you know? So that's these things when these people talk about being Christians and all this stuff. It's like, first of all, they don't understand the reality of what God is. And so this is the big lie in society. First of all, everybody that talks about God and everything, okay, and this is why I think I'm evolved, like super evolved. I'm as evolved as you can get. Because first of all, you have to have basic understandings of what things are. So like first understanding like what like the Christianity would teach you is that God's an everlasting being, right? Okay, so first of all, that's a lie. There's nothing that lasts forever. It's impossible. There's nothing that lasts forever. So whatever that God being is out there, eventually it will die. It'll be dead, gone. Dead. God will eventually die off just like any other thing that's out there. It will die. And so what happens is that God has to set up an environment where these are other gods that this God calls his children, you know, which would be us. That's where we fit into this thing, okay? So the reality is, one of the things is that like the Christianity and stuff, they constantly say God's eternal, God's going to last forever, and they constantly say you're not God, you're not a God. That's what they say. That's the satanic lie and the freaking false propaganda to steer you away from the real truth that God will eventually die. God needs good gods to take rule and order over things and stuff, and that's our thing. So what we're learning here, the thing that we're learning here by being human beings, is we need to learn how to be humble, because we couldn't learn that when we were in the presence of God, right? And we were actual gods. We couldn't understand what it meant to die. We didn't understand it. We could see it and stuff, but there's a big difference between seeing things and understanding. It's like that, oh, you know, my parents died. I know I'm going to die, and you know, I'm going to die. Okay, so when you're here as a human being, you're going to die. And we can understand that in a time frame, and you see the death around you, and it humbles you. That's like the number one experience about what we're experiencing here as being humans is death and how to be humbled from it. And why would we learn that experience? Because that's the experience that we couldn't learn being gods in the presence of God. We could not learn that to be humble, to understand that we're going to die. Just we couldn't learn it. That's what this thing was all created for and stuff. And we all volunteered to come down here. God did not send us down here. We're not condemned. God didn't condemn us. God offered a solution to our problem and offered, would you like to volunteer to go through that process? We all volunteered to come down here. See, they're all lying to you. All their lies trying to tell you that you're nothing. You got to bow down and serve. That's Satan's way. And isn't it fucking ironic that every freaking religion kind of tells you that same thing? So when they want to talk about how is Satan dominating the world, it's like, well, through mass religion is obviously one of the main forms. And here comes a call for uprising, keeps trying to tell you, oh, don't say the Satanist is out there. Yeah, but go to Christ, because that's the way. Follow his mantra, you know? So that's why I'm always trying to get you to understand that it's just another form of Satanism of what a call for an uprising is. And that's why his page is all talking about Satan, because in reality, he's a Satanist. If he wasn't a Satanist, why would his page be 100% dedicated to talking about Satan? That means all day he thinks about Satan. All night when he's having dreams, he thinks about Satan, has satanic dreams, thinks about perverted satanic rituals and all kinds of shit. Okay, well, that must mean he's probably a Satanist.
Right?
Right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, this guy's it's just one bad seed, one bad apple, and it's all of them. All of them.
Okay, so see how he judges all of them, like I'm saying about the religion. Well, it's all of them. If he's willing to do that, he's talking about all the Hollywood system, right? About the way it is, right? Well, then see, he would speak the same way. Well, it's all of them. And like I said, it's the religion. Within that religion, you're going to find this mantra that is constantly telling you there's an everlasting God and you're not God. You're serve us, bow down to us. You got to worship. That's pretty much all you get through that, all of them.
So even a story like this, if it does come out and he points names, that's what it's going to end up being. And like I said, the Soda Pop Club, I mean, there's so many stories out there about the stuff that goes on in the Hollywood underworld, but it's really right in front of people's faces. Parents were letting their kids who were aspiring actors go hang out at clubs at night when they're like 12 years old, 13 years old, with 50-year-old men.
Okay, so see his argument right there? Parents were letting their kids who were aspiring actors go hang out in clubs with people who are 50-year-old men, right? Okay, let's put it in the context of the church. Okay, these parents are letting their children who are aspiring Christians, letting their children hang out with adults at night in church environments where, how much of that takes place every day all around the country. And not only does it take place, it's promoted and it's encouraged, right? And you're going to be a good citizen if you do that. And we know that the massive forms of sexual abuse that takes place on children in this country, where would it actually be taking place? It's in the churches, because they're performing mind control on them. They're doing all their they're doing all their sacrificial ritual practices, and they're sexually abusing them. That's where it's actually happening. So if you want to talk about where is Satan actually practicing and actually functioning in our society, well, obviously it's in the churches. I mean, look at the practice of what takes place there. It's all freaking Satan. And just like he said, if you've got kids hanging out with people who are 50 years old and the parents are letting them do it, how is that possible? Oh, well, go look at the church. I'm sure you're going to find that taking place in the church system abundantly. And people doing it with smiles on their faces. Here's my kid. Teach my kid on the ways of the world. Yeah, oh yeah, here, come on in,
Right? I mean, that's disturbing. 50-year-old men shouldn't be hanging out with 10-year-olds, period. Even if they claim, there's no attraction, right? Like Michael Jackson, there's no attraction. You shouldn't be doing it, period. It's wrong. It's sick.
Okay, so is it wrong and sick for Michael Jackson to have invited children into this place that he had built, the Neverland Ranch. We're not talking about, it was not club for kids, right? That's not, I mean, that's what the people act like, you know, like this is like, oh, he built like the best club for kids, right? But that's not what it was, actually. It's like the people act like Michael Jackson's like going, oh, come on over and have some candy and we're going to watch the freaking Shirley Temple films while I freaking masturbate over in the corner and look at your buttholes. Like, that's what the story of how they think Michael Jackson's situation, okay? That's what they think has happened. It's like, no, come on, that's ridiculous, you know? But this guy, now think about in the real world, what's actually wrong? Was it wrong for Michael Jackson to do what he did if he's not having sex with them? I look at Michael Jackson where he treated the kids like he would hug on them like he would hug on an animal, like how he would hug on like a little brother, like where if he was an older brother and there was a little kid, like a younger brother, his younger sibling that he's like trying to raise and nurture in the family. That's the way I would look at how he would treat them. Or if he was a parent at times, he would look at like that. So that everything of what I see with Michael Jackson falls under those umbrellas. And then when you understand the real understanding of why Michael then did all of that stuff too, it's that Michael Jackson's an orphan. He was given to the Jackson family. Michael Jackson's not a real Jackson. And his real mother, Diana Ross, and his real father, Smokey Robinson. So when Michael Jackson gets signed back to Motown, then they tell him the truth, that he actually is their child. That's when everything comes out. So then Michael Jackson as a child is working hard trying to be part of the Jackson family, trying to do good for Joe and all the family. As soon as he does good and they get to the achievement where they get signed to Motown, Michael gets hit with the reality that he's not part of that family. Okay, so then now he's got Diana Ross in there nurturing and trying to embrace on him. Like how you see the Michael like hugging on the kids. What was happening was Diana was doing that to him. All of that stuff and way more. We're talking about the mother on a young boy. Okay, so what she was doing, the hugging and the kissing and the embracing of what you, like that's what she was doing to him. And it was Diana Ross, okay? So that's the nature of the reality when people want to talk about, well, why would Michael hug these kids and stuff? It's because he's remembering back when his mother was hugging him, he's lost in that moment. That's what they call it, the Peter Pan syndrome. He's the adult he's an adult like child. He never wants to grow up. He's like Peter Pan. And it's like, well, he's Peter Pan because he's an orphan child. That's what happened to him. And like how he says he's sick. Yeah, he is sick, but not sexually perverted like you are. Like this, a call for an uprising. Like who's more sick in the real world? Michael Jackson was a freaking orphan, all damaged, has all this real issue dealing about that exact issue, being an orphan child with the mother coming in when he was young. All of those exact issues, when you can see it playing out as he's older, that all those are the issues that he's dealing with. It's not sexual. It's this abandonment, orphan child, being lost in the world, can't trust anybody. You can see it all exactly in the reality of what the life he led. But so now who's the worst person? Is Michael Jackson the worst person because he was victimized like that? And then he was trying to look for some form of normalcy and some form of companionship that's not sexual because he doesn't want to get into sexual relationships with women and have kids. That's the thing that's like he's so far away because he's so tied into being a rock star. He's so devoted to that he can't even think about being a freaking husband at all. But he still longs for having some of that companionship. So through that, he does a thing where he likes to spend time with kids and have fun, and he enjoyed it. That was one of his things. Okay, so who's worse in the world? Is Michael Jackson bad for doing what he did when he was the damage? Now when you understand who he was and why he was doing those things, I admit to basically everything of what you see, except there is no sexual abuse going on. And the kids are manipulated, and we can show how they're manipulated to say, because they're coerced, because the reality that Michael was hugging on them and treating them with love and stuff. That's all true. I agree to all that stuff. But the reason he's doing that is because he has there is no sexual thing going on whatsoever in Michael Jackson's life at all. Not just with the kids, at all. Michael's got no sexual encounters occurring in his life at all. He was damaged when he was informed that he was not a real Jackson, and then throughout that process, he remained a virgin. He never think about reality, like Michael Jackson, like making out with a girl. Like, I know he's a virgin, but I can't even tell you, like, the reality, like, did he even ever make out? Like, I'm talking like making out with a girl. Like, you know, he didn't have that. Like, I think in my teenage experience, like how many girls I made out with and shit, right? Michael Jackson did not have those experiences. He wasn't making out with girls, and you can see through his freaking development into his 20s, it's like, that looks like a dude who's never even made out with a girl. And that's why you people are willing to go look and see him as a pedophile. But so now, who's worse? Michael Jackson, who's got this total virgin, you know, aura about him, you know, completely. You could see it totally. So now you people just don't know that he's got the victim, that he's damaged, that he's got this thing about him, that he was damaged, and there's this major thing. And that's what's causing the other problem that you people don't see, and because you don't know the truth. So you people then, because you don't know the truth, and that's what I say is worse. What's worse? Is it worse what Michael did to soothe some of his pains and stuff by what he did by hanging out with kids? Is it worse that he did that? Or is it worse that he's not a pedophile, that he's really not a pedophile, and this A Call for an Uprising clearly, constantly sees him sexually abusing boys? Okay, when Michael's not sexually abusing boys, but in this guy's head, he sees Michael Jackson sexually abusing boys. He literally can visually see Michael Jackson sexually abusing boys. So who's the Satanist here? Is it Michael Jackson, who was victimized by his family and by society, all of the things? Decided, hey, I'm not going to even deal with any of that in my real life. I'm just going to try and have a little bit of peace and feel in what it's like to feel like a kid and be innocent again. You can clearly see that's exactly the life of what he lived. So who's more wrong? Michael Jackson for living that life, or you for thinking that he's molesting boys because he's living that life? Who's actually more wrong in the world? Is it Michael because he's a victim and he has to do this stuff to try and feel normal? Is he a bad guy for that? I don't think so. But you pronouncing to the world that he's definitely sexually abusing boys, it's so obvious. Who's the Satanist here? All you talk about is Satan, A Call for an Uprising. That's all you talk about on your page. Occultism, Satanism, all of that shit. I would think that you're the one that's a freaking Satanist, because that's all you talk about. And not only do you talk about it, you clearly show you're willing to show that you visually are able to have thoughts about a guy who's just a victim in the world. You're clearly able to take that victim and turn him into a sexual deviant pervert when there's no actual evidence of any sexual perversions in his actual life. There's no sexual history, none. Except these freaking kids who've been manipulated, psychologically manipulated, and now they're seeing magic stuff, they're doing weird shit to them, they're fucking with them. It's total fucking bullshit. But the guy who claims to be the Christian says, oh no, he must be having sex with them. So who's the problem here? The Call for an Uprising is obviously demonic in his pure nature and soul of who he is. That's why when he sees this stuff, he says, he must enjoy it. That's the other thing. He can't make videos like this and think about stuff like this unless he's enjoying it. He enjoys to think about, visualize Michael Jackson sexually abusing young boys. Because why? Because he must, in his mind, is he a pedophile? Does he actually have those thoughts? When he sees young boys, does he see them as sexual objects? I sure as hell don't. When I see a young boy, kids, I sure as hell don't fucking, there's not even a thought that's like, oh, that's a sexual, it's not even, it's like, I don't even know how to describe it because it's so not even a thought. It's like, I'm not looking at that like a sexual object. It's like they're kids still, they're just kids. They're not in the sexual world. It's like, they're just kids. So, but this guy, he has no problem at being like, ooh, Michael Jackson's going to get him a piece of that ass, right? There's got to be something wrong with him mentally to be allowing himself to be thinking that way. And I don't have to say is there something wrong with them, because look at his videos, all they talk about is Satanism. Look at, here's all the signs, here's all the symbols. Trust me, because I've done all the work, I think about this, I do all the research. It's like, well, why? Because are you a Satanist?